President Trump started off his first day as president with a whirlwind of activities, from attending multiple balls, luncheons, press conferences, to being inaugurated, and then spending all night signing Donald J. Trump. To help me go through this, I have Charlie Spiering. Charlie, thank you so much for joining me.
You bet, Stephen. Good to be back.
I always love getting your insight. So just some background. Charlie is a writer and author. He's a journalist for the DailyMail and also the author of Amateur Hour, a book about the life, history, and career of Kamala Harris. He helped expose who she really is and who she wasn't. I want to jump into this story that I'm hoping will just kind of go away, but sometimes these rumors get legs. But MSNBC, CNN, others, they're now spreading this rumor that Elon Musk is secretly a Nazi. And at his first chance after Trump's inauguration, he tells the crowd that their vote helped save humanity by putting Trump in office and that he loves them. He then pounds his heart and puts his hand out like that. And now they're saying he's a Nazi, Nazi tendencies.
Stephen, what are you doing? You just imitated it, and now you're on the list.
Oh my gosh! I guess I'm a Nazi too. So, what are your thoughts? Is this just the mainstream media on the left being stupid?
Yeah, they're being really sensitive about this, right? Because anybody who's on the right that sticks their arm out in any direction is automatically branded as a Nazi by leftists on social media, by media people, because they're instantly triggered back, because that's what they really think. They really think that Elon Musk is a Nazi. So anytime he demonstrates, an action that looks anything close to a Nazi salute, that's when they're going to brand it as a Nazi salute. A lot of Musk defenders are saying, this is a Roman salute. Others are saying it's kind of like when you're at a concert and you pound your chest and my love goes out to you, but he didn't point. He just stuck his hand out. So, interpret it as you may. I saw Elon Musk today just being like, this is outrageous. Dismissing it and be like, no one even cares what they think anymore. And then his oft-repeated phrase, "You are the media now," referring to the users on X, really kind of just sort of sidestepping this. And it's true, the establishment cable media doesn't have nearly the push and the moral high ground as they did in the beginning of the first Trump administration, before they kind of lost credibility on this aspect. So yeah, obviously not a good look for Musk, but do you really think he was trying to imitate Hitler here, or was he just sort of awkwardly being an awkward billionaire, not really realizing what he was doing, trying to show his love for the crowd? I think the latter is what we are to, interpret that as being.
Yeah, I mean, like, my heart goes out to you,
Yeah, there you go again, Stephen. Careful.
He's throwing his heart at the crowd. And it's just, It's so ridiculous to me, because many of them were like, you know what? I wonder if Kamala Harris lost the election because we pushed this Donald Trump's a Nazi, Donald Trump's a Hitler narrative. And then day one, what did they do? They switch it over to Elon Musk is now a Hitler-loving Nazi that hates the Jews. I mean, get a new playbook, please. We're so tired of it.
Yeah, I really think the American people kind of see it for what it is and dismiss it entirely, because they just are no longer able to be as easily triggered as cable news maybe perhaps would like them to be. Is it newsworthy? Sure. People are talking about it. Let's cover it. But yeah, let's not be on the forefront of, trying to label it for what it is.
Yeah. I like how on the right, people are like, okay, he went to Israel with Ben Shapiro. He's taken Jewish history classes. After October 7th, he went out to spend time with Benjamin Netanyahu and see the situation with his own eyes. And then on the left, they're like, no, he's definitely a Nazi. So anyway, it's the same over and over again. Speaking of the mainstream media, let me roll this clip and then we'll talk about it. 1 second here.
Is that a thing? Preemptive blanket pardons? I mean, I haven't heard about this since like Monopoly with a get out of jail free card.
Trump has discussed with advisors whether to grant preemptive pardons. What does that say? That he wants to excuse them for things before anybody's even saying there's an investigation.
President Trump, as he winds down his last few weeks in office, is considering preemptive pardons. What a mess. More as we know.
Source saying that some of the president's inner circle, well, they're telling him that it would be perfectly fine to pardon his family and other associates preemptively, even though they haven't been charged with any crimes. How much damage could be done to this country can he do to this country on his way out?
So this was 4 years ago. The mainstream media saying Trump is evil. He's thinking about pardoning his family, people close to him. And then now they're completely silent on the fact that Joe Biden actually did the very thing they were accusing Donald Trump of, and Donald Trump did not do that thing. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, unbelievable. It's one more sign of like how they used to have this kind of moral clarity. And then once Biden actually does it, were they the first ones out there sort of condemning his actions? And no, they were probably, a lot of them aren't exactly, on the forefront anymore. I guess I'm referring to, Cuomo for one and Don Lemon as the other, two people who were at sort of the peak hysteria mongers at CNN who are kind of quietly told to go away. But I do think that it is astonishing that Biden felt the need to pardon his entire family in advance, just even after he left the White House with Trump for the inauguration. That's when he announces these pardons, when there's just minutes, when he just has minutes left to be president. What a bad look for his presidency. What a bad look for anybody that criticized Trump for his pardons. It really looks bad, worse than Hunter, worse than anything else. Not only the people on the select committee, Liz Cheney, Kissinger, not only them, but also his entire family, just really sort of setting this narrative that, the Biden crime family needs to be pardoned in case the Republicans try to go after them. Well, look, you lost Joe and you're no longer president. So I don't think the Democrats are going to be going after, or I don't think Republicans are going to be going after you with quite as much vigor as they were before.
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting because they've made comments in the past, like accepting a pardon is accepting the fact that you are guilty of a crime. Why would you need to be preemptively pardoned if you were a criminal?
All those narratives, right?
And now they're all just falling right into it. And yet you don't see Dr. Fauci saying, no, I'm not guilty. Or Mark Milley, no, I'm not guilty of treason. His family, Liz Cheney, they're all just kind of like, yeah, we're just going to take it and keep our head down. It was very bizarre. And as you mentioned, my understanding is that as Biden is waiting for Trump in the rotunda, he signs his final thing with minutes left of being president of the United States and pardoning 5 of his family members. The other thing that's really weird is, he pardons Hunter back to 2014, and everybody's like, wow, that's really weird and specific. He did the same thing to Dr. Fauci. Why go back 11 years to cover? I don't know. The whole thing is bizarre, right. Very last minute.
Not just his actions during the pandemic, it's beforehand. So it's this understanding that if Trump wants to, and the Democrats were very good at weaponizing the justice system to take on Trump, and knowing that if Trump wanted to do the same thing that Biden did to Trump and the Trump family, that he could very well successfully do it. And that's why they felt the need to issue these pardons. There's real evidence that Dr. Fauci could be brought to trial and found guilty of a crime from activity before the pandemic, not to mention all of his lies during the pandemic and all of his lies to Congress and lies to the American people. Unbelievable, that kind of the audacity to issue that kind of pardon, but they felt that it was necessary. That's what's even more surprising.
Yeah. What do you see in Joe Biden's future? He's now departed, but he says, I'm not going away. I'm not going anywhere. I personally, I wouldn't be shocked to see his health, especially his mental health, decline very rapidly now that he's out of the White House. He's not getting the same kind of presidential medicine and medical treatment. What are your thoughts? Where do you think Joe Biden goes from here?
I think he ends up at his house in Delaware and will live quietly until the end of his days. I don't see him traveling too much. I don't see him giving too many public speeches. I don't see anybody paying him to deliver a speech. Unlike former past presidents, they always wanted to get those former presidents out on a speaking tour where they could rake in hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't see that happening with Joe. He'll be lucky if he has enough time to put together a sort of a last memoir of his, first and only term as president. But other than that, I think he doesn't have much gas left in the tank.
Yeah. Well, I think he might just end up at the beach. I mean, that's where he spent 40% of his presidency was in Delaware or at a beach with Jill.
He enjoys the comforts of home and the familiarity of home. And I certainly think that's where, we might see him. If the biggest question is who will be the next president's funeral, because we all know that, Bill Clinton is actually younger than Joe Biden. Joe Biden, 82, the oldest living president right now. It'll be very interesting to see how much longer he has to live and whether or not he will be, at the next presidential funeral upright.
Yeah. Speaking of Bill Clinton, I thought this was interesting. President Trump was asked yesterday if he got into a tricky situation, which of the past living presidents might he consult with or call on for counsel? And he said, maybe Bill Clinton.
Surprising.
But he did not say George W. Bush. No. He did not say Biden. He did not say Obama. I mean, I didn't expect him to say those, but I also did not expect him to say Bill Clinton. That one caught me a little bit off guard. Before you get to that, let me take a quick second for a commercial break. Are you overwhelmed by back taxes or unfiled tax returns? The IRS is cracking down, hiring 20,000 new agents to issue millions of pay up or else notices in 2025. Don't face the IRS alone. Use my friends at Tax Network USA. They are here to help. As the nation's premier tax relief firm, Tax Network USA has negotiated over $1 billion in tax relief. Our experts specialize in penalty forgiveness, hardship programs where you might not owe anything until your tax debt expires, and lump sum settlements through offers in compromise. Whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, they have a solution. Even if you're behind due to missing records, their team will guide you through the process. The IRS is a collection machine. Do not get trapped in it. Use Tax Network USA. Do not call the IRS alone. Instead, call 800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Gardner for a free consultation today.
Right. For all of Bill Clinton's personal scandals, he had the reputation of being a sharp political operator and really set the presidency into this, set the tone of the presidency, the American presidency at least, that if you and your party lose in the midterm elections, then it's time to pivot and to recognize the mood of the country and pivot to more towards the center instead of going further and further left. And I think President Clinton was widely praised by the media, by pundits, by historians for doing that. And remember when Newt Gingrich swept into power with a historic majority of Republicans in Congress, Clinton stood up and famously said the era of big government is over, and then worked with Republicans to pass key reforms. In fact, he was so successful politically that that's why Republicans, not content with successfully pursuing their own agenda, that's why they ended up pursuing the Monica Lewinsky case and sort of made that a primary focus of their time in Congress, because it was actually all of the work that they were doing with President Clinton was actually helping Clinton politically. And it wasn't until the news about Monica Lewinsky broke did Republicans feel they had the political capital, the chance to sort of take him down. And they certainly did a lot of damage to his personal character. But overall, historically, looking at his presidency, he was somebody who was willing to find common ground and work together with Republicans and the right.
Also, I mean, he might just need some advice from someone who, how do you put up with Hillary Clinton? No, I'm teasing. How did you think
Fortunately, Trump doesn't have to put up with Hillary Clinton anymore, other than, running into her at funerals and places of dignitary where the, past presidents cross paths. It seems like that's the only time he'll be seeing Hillary Clinton in the future.
Yeah. How did you think yesterday went from, St. John's Chapel all the way through signing nearly 200 executive orders? What were your thoughts on the day?
Yeah, what a busy day. As reporters, we go into Washington at like 5 a.m. to cover this kind of stuff. Busy day. And, Trump is historically late at every single occasion. He shows up early, he stays later than he should. The sort of the dual sides of the inauguration speech. He gave one sort of profound official inauguration speech. Then he went to the overflow room at the Capitol and riffed for about 35 minutes on everything he really wanted to say, but didn't because it would have been too partisan. But he, clearly freewheeling on that. And then, the executive order signings at the Capital One Arena, putting the parade, sort of reshuffling that into some, kind of a big post-rally environment where his supporters were clearly delighted, signing executive orders and throwing the pens into the crowd. And then going to the Oval Office and signing some more executive orders. And finally, attending each of the 3 presidential balls, giving remarks to some of his supporters. I was at one of those balls. I think the last one he showed up at, and that was right around midnight by the time he started speaking. And so definitely a full day for everybody involved. It was a pretty historic day. There were people in MAGA hats running all over Washington, D.C., at all the restaurants, bars, just celebrating. The mood was exuberance. All the other federal employees were not in Washington, D.C. because it was a national holiday. So it really felt like a MAGA takeover of Washington, D.C. It was unlike anything I've ever seen.
Oh, very cool. That is, I appreciate your insight on that. I was up early to be on somebody else's podcast, and then I did 4 total shows for the day. And,
wow.
Man, Trump has more energy than me. He was just going from event to event, signing, excited, shaking hands. It was really.
Yeah, he had the big sword, and he's slicing cake at the military ball and dancing the YMCA with a sword. So very high energy. Needless to say, at the faith service this morning, he looked a little bit tired than usual, as everybody did. Kind of, sitting in the pew for the sort of hour plus long. It was supposed to be a bipartisan prayer service, sort of, summing up the inaugural events. But lo and behold, a liberal pastor there really turned it political, urging the president to please have mercy on everybody who is LGBT, who are currently fearing for their lives, she said, sort of escalating that into political territory that I don't think was necessary. We kind of sent a sour conclusion on the inaugural festivities, but certainly signals on what to expect in the next 4 years.
Yeah. I saw a funny video of Trump. Maybe I'll try to find it and share it later. But he was down at Mar-a-Lago, and a reporter said, how come gay people don't support you? And he was like, they do. Any gays for Trump? And a couple people raised their hand, and he was like, well, there you go. I mean, that guy doesn't, but, anyway, there you go. So like he's not this anti-LGBTQ, but he is very conscious of the fact that many of these children that they're trying to transition are too young to be making these decisions. Hormones in the wrong body wreak havoc from gender to gender. And he knows that parents want to protect their children and see a great future. So, I read about that this morning, that this woman tried to make this political, where it was more about just like, hey, let's, back to George Washington's day, let's pray for the new presidency, and start this thing off with good energy from, whether it was from rabbis to Christians to non-denominational. It was an interesting. What you wrote recently, Charlie, about the new external revenue service that President Trump believes will bring billions and billions and billions of dollars to the United States. Help me and my viewers understand what this is, and will there be enough tax revenue that maybe we see a decrease in taxes on American citizens?
Yeah, it's very interesting because, there's a clever Trump marketing ploy, right? Instead of calling it, more tariffs and fees on foreign countries, he's looking at the sort of the source of how do Americans think of government revenue? Well, it comes from the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, that taxes the people with an income tax. To bring revenue into the government to help pay for all the goods and services that it offers. So in order to sort of recreate this idea, he sort of pitches the external revenue service. Like, wait, maybe we don't need, I think in a perfect Trump world, he would get rid of the IRS entirely and get all the money he needs from tariffs on foreign countries and other, taxes on products manufactured overseas, for sure. It's not really feasible at this point, but in this case, he really is trying to harken back to a time, and he mentions, there was a time in this country when we didn't have the IRS, and we actually relied on tariffs and taxing foreign countries as our primary source of revenue. And it was a good time for the United States of America. So really trying to harken back to that idea, to that time. I believe he included it as part of his inauguration speech. And so it's very much a priority. I think when he was signing executive orders, he gave a shout out to Canada and Mexico, saying, by February 1st, I believe we'll be signing a 25% tariff on foreign goods coming from Mexico and Canada. Clearly something he wanted to sign on day one, but maybe his advisors were like, whoa, let's see if we can get Mexico and Canada to work with us here before we level something that drastic on trade coming from those countries.
Yeah. I agree. I think it was a brilliant marketing move. I hope, I don't know that you can fully get rid of taxing the citizens if people want, clean water and good roads and all of that. But if he could possibly reduce it like Reagan did, or like he did in his first term, and then have some of that revenue come in. But the other thing is, there's just so many people right now that are very knowledgeable to the fact that the government gives away a lot of their money to foreign wars and external sources. And so to now reverse the flow and have external sources bringing money in, if he can pull it off, it will be just as brilliant. It's like he said, Biden and Obama and others, they complain about all the tariffs he put on China, but they didn't get rid of them because it brings in hundreds of billions of dollars. And so anyway, it'll be really interesting to see how that one plays out. You made yourself somewhat of a Kamala Harris expert with your book, and I'm sure you studied Joe Biden a lot. How difficult do you think it was for them to sit through that inauguration, where not only did they lose the election, they're a one-term president, but now Trump is subtly blasting them and reversing things right there in the rotunda. What were your thoughts on maybe their reaction internally?
Yeah, it's thought that Joe Biden was very visibly shaken. He put up his hand to his, chin at one throughout. And then at one point, just was sort of almost like holding back some of the emotion that he was clearly feeling. Kamala was very disciplined. She just stoically stared straight ahead, knowing that any flinch or look or grimace would go viral. So she was very disciplined, had her hands crossed and sort of clenching the program for the ceremony. But yeah, it's hard for any outgoing president and vice president to sit and listen to the newly elected, newly popular president take charge. I do think the peaceful transfer of power and watching, the opposite party sitting there watching, the power shift to the incoming president when it's the opposing party. I think that's a very powerful symbol of our democracy. And I think for a lot of good reasons, Trump was criticized for, not doing that in 2020 because he felt that the election was stolen from him. But it does remind you the power of this ceremony when you do see, the person that was once in power that was doing all these things to our country. When you see that public rejection, it really reminds you who's really in charge. The people are in charge. The people have elected a change, and it's taking place in front of us all, and we can watch it all take place. And there's no sort of residual. Granted, there's still some, abuses of power if an outgoing president signs a bunch of pardons as he hits the helicopter to take off for vacation, but. I do think overall it does sort of remind us that, it's the people that are in power and we are sort of in control of our country going forward.
Yeah. Many have said that Trump is coming in at the height of a president's power, meaning he doesn't have another term after this. He has very few craps left to give. He has a very clear vision for what he wants to execute in the next 4 years. Do you think he'll actually be able to do that? Right now, the Democrats have been, grumbling on the mainstream media and their X platform, but they're not really doing a lot. Is that going to continue, or do you think that they are just regrouping and planning to make an all-out assault to block him?
Yeah, I do think they're looking. They're sort of sitting back and waiting for a politically damaging moment, and that's what they're sort of just. I think in the first term, Trump kind of had a little bit of that, and when he first got inaugurated, it didn't last long. I think as soon as he issued, the so-called Muslim ban, which was effectively a travel ban on specific countries that were dangerous for hosting terrorists. I think they found common cause with that to sort of launch an all-out assault on Trump and his agenda. This time around, it's proven that the American people are sort of a lot more with Trump on this time. He's not quite the shock. Because this time the American people elected Trump knowing what he was and knowing what he would do. And Trump said what he would do. We're not dealing with a politician that lied, said he would do all these things and now is not going to do these things, or said he wouldn't do all these things and now changes his mind, decides to do them anyway. Where he has this sort of mandate that everybody talks about, and he also doesn't have to run for re-election. So he's very aware that to have a second term, and it's very unique this time because he actually still has power. Most presidents in their second term lose power to the opposing party, and they're just clinging for their lives, hoping to keep their agenda intact for another 4 years. In this case, Trump is really just, has a chance to make a second splash on the scene, get a lot done, and he knows exactly what he wants to do, exactly what he failed to do last time. He's really moving forward with a lot of motivation and purpose.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, this last question is maybe more of a Daily Mail question than a Charlie Spiering, but I do want to get your opinion. During the election cycle, Daily Mail broke what I thought was a huge bombshell story about Kamala Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff, violently assaulting a girlfriend in public after like a movie premiere or something like that. Do you know if any more is planned with Daily Mail on that story, or does that maybe just get shelved and brought back out if she decides to run for governor or president in 2028?
Well, a lot of that was a story that we worked with sources involving a woman who, was very careful. We were very careful to protect her identity and try to keep her, it's a very sensitive subject, right? When you're the victim of violence, but yet you want your story told because you are a victim of violence at the hands of a man who is now being celebrated as sort of a fierce protector of women and a male feminist. you want to point out that hypocrisy in a very sensitive, careful way without completely, exposing the woman to public ridicule or shame, or, for whatever reasons she wishes to remain anonymous. We were surprised that, no one in the media sort of picked up on the story or, followed up on it. But it's certainly one that we will, bring up again if there's any developments. Obviously, we sort of pushed it as far as made sense as news people. But unless, this woman wants more attention and more, or if we find other women who have been who are willing to talk about Emhoff's behavior with them, I think that we'll obviously cover those stories. And once again, when you have somebody in power leaving power, there's a sense that a lot of those stories aren't quite as important unless they decide to run for president again. And I talked to people in Washington, D.C., a lot of Democrats who fully believe that Kamala Harris will run another presidential campaign. It's unclear how popular she is or whether she will be welcomed by the Democratic Party, who are willing to give her a second chance. Those are all open questions, but there is no question that she is planning to come back and run again.
Okay. I had heard that, and there was some polling saying that she's the front runner, but everyone was saying, my goodness, it's way too early. The only thing I can think of is, on the one hand, they spent over $2 billion trying to polish her image. On the other hand, she's never gotten any votes in a primary. And so if she has to go through a real traditional Democrat primary, unless she's leading with the woman of color ticket or something, I just don't know that the American people are even going to get her through the primary, just like when she ran before. So it'll be really interesting to follow her. Hopefully your book, Amateur Hour, gets a second chance to credit her and tell the truth about who she is. But that's interesting that people in D.C. are saying they think that she's not done, that she is going to run again.
Right. And part of that is when she left the White House after the inauguration, she went straight back to her home in California and made a point of visiting a fire department and speaking with firefighters there and giving a speech saying, we wanted to stop by and, make sure that your voices are being heard in regard to the fires. And, our house wasn't burned down, thankfully, but we wanted to be here for you. Everyone here in California that's dealing with the fires. What an interesting thing. Why didn't she do this when she was still the vice president? Maybe Biden and his team were like, no, you can't do that because it'll make the president look bad for not doing that. But it seemed like on the top of her list, as if she's already sort of planning her future life. Finally, unleashed from the Biden chains, Kamala now has a chance to go out and be herself. And it'll be interesting to see whether that new version of herself resonates better with voters than it did during her 106-day campaign this summer, where voters clearly rejected what she was selling.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Interesting. Okay. Charlie, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to give us an insight on what's happening there in Washington, D.C. I want to put some direct links down below. If people want to follow you, continue to read your work, where can I point them?
Send them to @CharlieSpiering on X. I'm also on YouTube, Instagram, and of course, all the time at DailyMail.com.
Okay. I will put those direct links down below. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Great. Thanks so much, Stephen. Anytime.